The time has come to talk about Joe Schoen. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the Empire State Sports Report. I'm your host, Adrianna, also known as New York Giants fangirl on social media. So make sure you're following along over there for daily New York Giants news and updates. This podcast is brought to you by Believe Network and FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is the #1 sports betting app. They have boosts, they have the best odds, they have promos, you name it. FanDuel Sportsbook has it. So download the app today and make sure to always bet responsibly. All right, so today we're going to go through Joe Schoen's transactions as the Giants GM by year. We're going to go through the draft first, free agency, and then ultimately decide whether or not we think he should stay on as the GM. So let's start with the draft. We're going to go from the bottom here, starting with 2022. So I know we all remember this draft and we remember it so well. So they have Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Wan'Dale Robinson, Josh Ezeudu, Cordell Flott, Daniel Bellinger, Dane Belton, Micah McFadden, DJ Davidson, Marcus McKeithen, and then the last one underneath there is Darian Beavers. So this is the first draft. And when Joe Schoen spoke to the media during his presser, he said that he's made some mistakes along the way. And sometimes he feels like he strayed away from his process or what he thought was the right move and did something different. And I wonder if this is what he was in reference to, because this draft is not great. Kayvon obviously is good, not worthy of the 5th overall pick. Evan Neal's a bust. Wan'Dale Robinson is good again, but a pretty high pick on a slot wide receiver. Joshua Ezeudu, not good. Cordell Flott is good. It's taken him till year 4 to get there. Daniel Bellinger, again, good, not great. Dane Belton, good, not great. Micah McFadden, good, not great. DJ Davidson, fine. Marcus McKeithen is not even on the team anymore, and neither is Darian Beavers. So, for a team that struggles with depth and the focus with getting players towards the end of the draft is for depth pieces, out of 4 of them, you've got a 50% rate so far at the start. So, out of this group, I would re-sign Cordell Flott 100%. I would re-sign Micah McFadden too. We desperately need linebacker help. So I would give him maybe like a 2-year deal, I think, until we can really bulk up the linebackers, especially if they cut Bobby O, which could be a possibility because I believe they have an out after this year. So this draft class as his first draft class overall, again, not great. You're talking about a lot of guys who on other teams are lucky if they are on the 53-man roster. Wan'Dale Robinson, like I said, good. He's been productive, but he has some games where he's unbelievable and has over 100 yards receiving. And then he has games like he had last night, where at 8 targets, he had 7 receptions for 34 yards. And just every time they tossed him the ball, someone was there ready to tackle him. So I like Wan'Dale. I probably wouldn't resign him, but I think he will end up being a player on another team and will be fun. So anyway, out of this class, I'm keeping Thibodeau, I'm keeping Flott, I'm keeping McFadden, and I might be keeping Dane Belton as a depth piece, and same thing with Bellinger. I would re-sign those guys to cheaper deals because we need the depth while we have it. This is everyone's favorite draft class, is it not? Where you've got one good player out of 6. Deonte Banks with the first round pick here, and then JMS, Jalen Hyatt, Eric Gray, Trey Hawkins, and Jordan Riley. Now, one of the things that I wondered again when Schoen was talking about his mistakes was also this with Deonte Banks, because they drafted Banks because of Wink. Like you see it all over Hard Knocks. And, Joe Schoen was asked too about Dart. And I'll sprinkle in some info as we go through this from what he said in his presser this week too. But he was asked about Dart, about how, it seemed obvious that Dable was the one who really wanted Dart and he wasn't really on board. Like, what did he think about that? And he said that actually him and his scouts, he was like, I give my team a lot of credit for this because they are actually the ones who had Dart on their radar even before Dable did, because it was during the season and Dable was still coaching. So I thought that was interesting. But it was agreed upon. Everyone in the building liked him. He was one of the first people that they met with at the Senior Bowl that they had a scheduled visit with. So he was on their radar early, allegedly, supposedly, says Joe Schoen. But like Tay Banks, it was just so obvious that they drafted him because Wink liked him. And, again, I don't really understand the process here. But he's garbage, not going to be here next year. JMS is fine. I don't have a problem with him. keep him. He's got, I think, one more year left. Great. Next up, Jalen Hyatt, who they traded up for, who's a guy that I liked at the time, and I have been rooting for him because I thought he was a good football player. And what's really hard for me to decipher is our coaching staff really that bad, or are the players that bad? The answer is probably somewhere in the middle, realistically. But I really have to wonder with someone like Jalen Hyatt. Like, again, we talk about the personality issues and the immaturity that we talked about in the last episode. Jalen Hyatt, has had issues with the coaching staff and the front office. And it's like, bro, you've been here for like 2 years. Why don't you contribute something in practices, prove that you deserve reps with the ones, and then, maybe you'll get some playing time, or when you get playing time, I don't know, catch the ball, like run the right route. I don't know. Anyway, he's not going to be here next year. Eric Gray, goodbye. Trey Hawkins, not even on the team anymore. And Jordan Riley is maybe on the practice squad. So this draft sucks. So now you're talking about a front office staff who has had 6 draft picks, and in year 1, they had, I think this was 10 or 11 draft picks. So you are talking about now at minimum 15 players that could have contributed to your football team. Now, they didn't all need to be starters. They didn't all need to be all pros or pro bowlers right off the bat. Obviously, that's unrealistic, especially when you're talking about guys in rounds 5 and below. Okay, that's fair. But the fact that not only some of these guys are not even on the team anymore, they're not in the NFL anymore. They're not even on practice squads. They're not even good enough for another team's practice squad. And this is the first 2 years of your regime here where you're tasked with trying to fix this roster. And this is what you do. This is your resume in the first 2 years. I mean, it's just awful on so many levels. And then 2024, Malik Neighbors, Tyler Nubin, Drew Phillips, Theo Johnson, Tyrone Tracy, Darius Muasau. Hold on. I wonder if there was one more in that class that's just not showing up here. No, that's it. Okay. So again, you've got another six draft picks here. And last year, this was a class that saved Joe Schoen, right? This draft class was contributing. Malik Neighbors is a stud, had an amazing rookie year with the world's worst quarterbacks. Great. Tyler Nubin looked much better last year than he did this year. Same thing with Drew Phillips. Made some plays when it mattered, was decent in coverage, not great, but was good enough for, a pretty bad team with bad corners. And then, Theo Johnson has been consistently hit or miss. And the way that he was seemed so upset with himself during some of those drops in the game. I'm just on Monday night, I'm like, is this a head case type of thing? Like, is it just all in his head? He's this drop issue. Like, is he coaching? Like, I don't know what the problem is here. Is it just that's why he's a 4th round tight end? He's not Tyler Warren, he's not Brock Bowers. So I don't know. I mean, the expectation was obviously he's not going to be either one of those guys, but this is now the 2nd tight end that you've taken in the 4th round. And Daniel Bellinger is a much better pass catcher. He's just never really used as one. And, Theo is he's very inconsistent, and he's not the only one on this football team, but he needs to work on that big time. Next up, Tyrone Tracy. Great. I have no complaints here for a 5th round pick. Great. And Darius Muasau, fine. He's been injured, and we are so desperately missing him because our linebacking core stinks. But overall, fine for a 6th round linebacker. He is good enough, at that rate, fine. He's helpful. Okay, then the last and final draft class that we have here from 2025. We have Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, Darius Alexander, Cam Scadaboo, Marcus Bowe, and Thomas Fidoni. This is probably his best draft class to date, but the problem is that we are not getting a lot of production out of these guys. Abdul Carter being one of them, who again is 1.5 sacks and also is proving to be a little bit immature and have some disciplinary issues and unreliable, which is unacceptable. So that's a problem. Jackson Dart, who's a good football player, improving every week. They traded up for him. Again, Shane said that he was on everyone's radar. They all liked him. He credits his staff to the reason why they were able to get him at 25, that they knew how the board was going to fall, that they didn't have to give up a lot to trade for him, and they felt like that was the right move, and they have their quarterback, etc. So again, he's done well. He just has, needs to learn how to protect himself, and he's got to, improve a little bit more. Darius Alexander is doing better. I think he's a good player. I think in year 2, we will see a big jump out of him. Dre Patterson said earlier on in the year, the reason why he wasn't playing was because he he needed more time to develop. And it seems like, he needed some technique stuff to work on, and he would play him when he was ready. And he's been playing since then. So that is good news from Darius Alexander. So I'm excited to see how he progresses. Next up, Scat, great pick. Love him. No complaints. Scat, Marcus Bowe, I also really like. Steele at the time. I think he's going to be a good offensive lineman. He's just, learning and growing right now because our offensive line is actually playing well. And then Fidoni has dealt with some injuries. So it's been a bummer. We haven't really seen much out of him, but he's on the roster for the next, 4 years. So we'll see if we can get anything out of him and help him. I don't know, see if he develops or anything. But the one thing that I want to say is when it comes to this draft overall, Joe Schoen has drafted a lot of defensive backs, and we're going to talk about that. Also, I missed two guys. So on this Corey Black cornerback, and then in this, was it this first draft, I think? No, the next one in 2023, Gervarius Owens was the last pick from the 2023 draft as well, which is here. So in 4 drafts, Joe Schoen has drafted 8 defensive backs. Okay, let's go through them. In 2022, round 4, they have Dane Belton. In round 3, they have Cordell Flott. Then in 2023, they have Gervarius Owens in round 7, Trey Hawkins in round 6, and Deonte Banks in round 1. 3 defensive backs in one draft. And then in 2024, they drafted back-to-back picks with Tyler Nubin and Drew Phillips. And then in the 7th round in this draft, 2025, Corey Black. So they have drafted 8 defensive backs. Not a single one of them is a stud. Out of 8! One of them who was a first-round pick in Deonte Banks, who literally sucks. And then, you have Tyler Nubin and Drew Phillips, who are good enough, not great. Dane Belton, good enough, not great. Cordell Flott, good enough, not great. You basically, not even a 50% rate of good defensive backs. In 4 years, you drafted 8 of them. And now that's a huge position that we have a problem with. And then you have to go sign a Debo for $54 million. And on Monday night, we finally have a healthy secondary for the first time in 5 weeks. And they give up 282 yards throughout the air. So we're doing great. Doing great under Joe Schoen. Those are the draft picks, okay? So I think net, I would probably give him like a C or a C minus because he's had some good ones, but the amount of players who are bad and, like I said, either not contributing to this team or any other team in the NFL is insane. Literally insane. Okay, so now let's go to the free agent signings. So 2022, I'll run through this list here. Let's just go through it. Tight end Ricky Seals-Jones, quarterback Tyrod Taylor, guard Mark Lewinsky, offensive lineman John Feliciano, wide receiver CJ Board, guard Jamil Douglas, running back Matt Breida, defensive end Jihad Ward, defensive tackle Justin Ellis, wide receiver Robert Foster, wide receiver Richie Jones, and then long snapper Casey Kreider. So that was the 2022 class, which out of that class, Tyrod was probably the best. Richie James actually was the best one, I think, in that group because he was the most productive out of everyone that year and actually contributed to the success of the 2022 season. So great. We have one good player there. They decide not to pick up the 5th-year option for Daniel Jones, and I believe they franchised Saquon at that time. So now we're going into 2023 and you've basically had one good free agent signing. You brought in a couple offensive linemen who all stink and you've got an offensive lineman who also stinks. Okay. 2023, they bring in Bobby O. That was the big signing of the year. Sign him to a 4-year deal. Linebacker, great. Also loved defensive tackle Ashawn Robinson, who was a big contributor in the 2023 season. Wide receiver Paris Campbell, wide receiver Jamison Crowder, defensive tackle Nacho, safety Bobby McCain, cornerback Amani Aruwe, and then tight end Tommy Sweeney. And then, of course, in that season, the 2023 season, they also traded for Darren Waller. They re-signed Isaiah Hodgins and Sterling Shepard to a 1-year deal. They re-signed Darius Slayton. 2023 is when they franchised Barkley, and then they signed Jones to the extension. Now, going through this list, I know everyone thinks that those are the worst 2 things that Joe Schoen did was the Saquon Barkley and the Daniel Jones thing. Now, something that I thought was interesting too when Shane was talking during his presser was Pat Leonard, I think it was, asked him, like, you constructed this roster and, leadership is obviously a problem. And you let guys like Saquon and McKinney, and I forget who else, he listed a couple other players, Leonard Williams, who you basically let walk. And then now you have a leadership problem. And Shane basically was like, I don't really think that we have a leadership problem. I think there are guys who are leaders like Brian Burns and whatever, he names a couple other players. And then, Pat Leonard went back at him and was saying something like, yeah, but the leaders are obviously a problem. Like there's a lack of accountability, whatever. So don't you think that you should have, maybe looking back now, maybe you should have done something differently? And Shane, again, kind of focused on that positional value, right? Where he was like, we only had a certain amount of money in free agency, and we're looking at the roster, like we couldn't give a running back that much when we could have had Illuminor and Runyon that next year in 2024. So, he went through kind of like, well, we had to do this. We couldn't do this because we had to do this. We had to bring in defensive linemen, so we couldn't sign this person, whatever. So anyway, like I said, I actually think that was the right move. I don't think the Giants were in any position to pay Saquon Barkley $13 million a year. However, they should have traded him. That's what they should have done. That was the right move there. And it's absolutely a problem that they didn't. It's a problem that John Mara told them they couldn't. And that was obviously a big issue there. But out of this group, I liked Bobby Okereke. I liked the Ashawn Robinson. I liked the Nacho signings. Darren Waller, I mean, obviously that panned out to be useless. Isaiah Hodgins was the best of this group. And then, of course, we all know what happened with Daniel Jones. Moving along to 2024, this was one of the better maybe free agent signings. I don't know. Tight end Jack Stoll. They've got John Runyon, Aaron Stinney, Casey Kreider, Chris Manhertz, Drew Lock, Austin Schlottman, Jalen Mills, Isaiah McKenzie, Jermaine Illuminor, Adoree Jackson, Devin Singletary, Brian Burns, Nick McLeod, Carter Coughlin, Deontay Johnson, Isaiah Hodgins, Tyree Phillips, and Tyrod Taylor. Out of this group, I actually think that this might have been his best free agent signing because I like that he went hard on the offensive linemen. He brought in Runyon, Stinney, Schlottman, and Jermaine Illuminor. So obviously finally decided to bulk up the offensive line there. They brought in Drew Lock. Needed a backup quarterback, not the best of the group, but fine. Singletary, I didn't love it at the time. He's been fine. Brian Burns obviously is the best of this entire group and the best free agent signing or trade that Joe Schoen has ever made. That, no question about that. Isaiah Hodgins was also a good signing, and Nick McLeod was honestly probably would be one of the better corners on this team right now. So that would have been nice if he kept him. Also, I don't like the fact that he supposedly told Nick McLeod to not pay rent money this month. Like when they were negotiating, like I don't like the tough negotiator act. I think it's necessary in certain instances, but I think that you don't have to be a dickhead about it. And him saying that to Nick McLeod is being a dickhead about it. Like Nick McLeod was making pennies compared to some of the other players on this football team. That to say that is gross. Also, Tyree Phillips was one of the good signings at that time too. I really like that they brought him in. And honestly, I wish they would have brought him back this offseason. And then they also brought in Pugh, I think in 2023, straight off the couch. So that was a fun one. And then next up, 2025, they had Lil Jordan Humphrey, Victor Dimukeje, Jeremiah Ledbetter, Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, Greg Van Roten, Emir Smith-Marset, Stone Forsythe, Javon Holland, Chris Board, James Hudson, Darius Slayton, Roy Robertson Harris, Paulson Adebo. This is one of the not great classes from Joe Schoen. Again, you've got Lil Jordan Humphrey, who they barely even elevated from the practice squad. Greg Van Roten, who had a really tough start to the year, is actually playing well enough. Emir Smith-Marset, I think, should potentially be playing over Gunner. I thought he did a great job. At the very least, I'd like to see him on special teams instead of freaking Eric Gray back there. And I'm glad they learned their lesson that we didn't have to watch him back there last night. But Javon Holland and Adebo, like Adebo being out for 5 weeks is brutal. You can't control the injuries, but I mean, he also had a tough night Monday night against the Pats. And then Holland, who was supposed to be this ball hawk like Dane Belton, like, some of these other guys that they brought in or drafted, and they're just not. Like for multiple consecutive years, we barely force any turnovers, whether it's fumbles or interceptions. I don't think we've ever had a pick six. in the last couple of years. So it's been this roster is not good. And look, the reality is when you're 2-11 for the second year in a row and you're losing 7 out of 8 years and you're losing 3 out of 4 under the same GM and the team is not really any better and you fired all the coaches and you brought in a new quarterback and now your quarterback's playing well, the offensive line is playing well. All these things that was like, oh, this is going to fix everything, didn't fix everything. So this defense that you assembled, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, you drafted Kayvon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter. You brought in Jeremiah Ledbetter, drafted Darius Alexander, brought in Bobby Ose, drafted Micah McFadden and Darius Muasau, drafted Tyler Nubin, Drew Phillips, and Cordell Flott. This is Joe Schoen's defense, every single player, except for Dexter Lawrence. He brought in Nacho. He brought in Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. He brought in, who else am I missing on the defensive line? Roy Robertson-Harris. Did I say that already? Sorry if I did. Nacho. Jeremiah Ledbetter. I mean, the list goes on. Literally every player. Because he didn't resign McKinney, who wasn't his draft pick. So every player on the defense, again, aside from Dexter Lawrence, is a Joe Schoen pick, whether it was free agency or the draft. And there's approximately 2 of them, maybe, who are good, maybe a little bit more than that. But with better coaching and better scheme, will be better, maybe. But I don't know how you look at this defense for the last couple of years and be like, yeah, no, it's going to be great. I don't have faith in that. So all of this to say that I don't think Joe Schoen has done a good enough job at all. I think he knows that. His press conference was very bizarre. I don't know. For those of you who listened to it, first of all, he was 30 minutes late. When he walked on and they showed him, he sounded out of breath, visibly looked not like he was put together, but he didn't mentally seem like he was prepared for this. I don't know if he just came from a very tough conversation with John Mara and Steve Tisch, but I think he knows that he is a dead man walking. I think he's not staying. He made it a point to say that ownership at the end of the season needs to evaluate everything. That includes himself. And I just thought the whole thing was not like the calm, cool, collected Joe Schoen appearances that we have seen over the last couple of years. So I think he knows that his time is coming to an end. He probably feels like he did the best that he could, but it wasn't good enough. So I am expecting John Mara, especially after that, to go ahead and fire him this offseason. And I think that you have to do that you have to suck it up and say, if I truly want to win deep down inside, if that's what I care about more than anything, we got to make some big time changes here. And I hope that they do, because I think that's the only way that you're going to get people to care about next year. That includes the fans that pay for the PSLs and the season ticket holders. That includes the fans who come from out of town to come see the games. That includes people who buy Giants jerseys, who pay for food at MetLife Stadium, who pay for gas and tailgating and the whole thing. All of that. You're not getting them excited by keeping Joe Schoen and hiring Matt Nagy or Arthur Smith. Like, that is not the way to do things. So they really need to start fresh, and I hope that they do. So anyway, it seems like majority of the fan base, especially after that press conference and after the Monday Night Football, is on board with the Joe Schoen firing. But let me know what you guys think in the comments, and enjoy the rest of the bye week. I will be back about a week from today to discuss Giants versus Commanders. So thank you guys for listening. This podcast is brought to you by Believe Network and FanDuel Sportsbook. We've got a game on tonight. The Cowboys are at the Lions, and I know we're all rooting for the Lions here, obviously. They are the favorites on FanDuel Sportsbook. They are minus 152 to win. The Cowboys are plus 128, and the spread is 3 points. Now, I am recording this on Tuesday, and I did just see that Amon-Ra, I believe, did not practice today due to the sprained ankle that he suffered on Thanksgiving. So I hope that he's back. Either way, Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, the Lions have a ton of talent. So let's go Lions, go out there and beat the Cowboys. Hopefully cover that 3-point spread and even more so. So enjoy the game tonight. If you guys are watching, enjoy the rest of your bye week, and I'll talk to you next week.